Okay, I'll talk about that later. So good to see you. Here we are again. Violet, you're in Singapore, right? Right. So Snehi was saying that she was in Singapore recently, and it was a bit late. So you're doing the late show there. Jennifer, good morning. Sean, Melvin, Nadine's connecting. Okay, so we're going to begin with some prayers and then a little bit of meditation for motivation. Is Sheila here? Who is yeah, put up.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you, Sheila. If you can you make that a little bit larger so we can see?
Mary Ellen is the host today.
Yeah,
Oh, Marianne, okay.
Sorry, just figuring out how to do that.
Okay, so whoever's the host, whoever's in charge of that should make sure the host knows how to do.
Okay, can you see that? Is that?
Yeah, it's not centered, so you can't see all the words.
Mary Ellen,
Okay.
I think.
There we go. There we go. Okay. So first of all, taking refuge in generating bodhicitta, as we will be talking today also about bodhicitta and so forth. Refuge is the basis for being constituted as a Buddhist, and bodhicitta is the sort of the defining factor of the Mahayana path. So I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all migrating beings. Sangye chodang soki chognam la, jangchu baru dagni kapsu chi, dagi chunen gipe sognam gi, drola penchi sangye drupa sho. Sangye chodang soki chognam la, jangchu baru dagni kapsu chi, dagi chunen gipe sognam ki, drola penchi sangye drupa sho. So even though my throat is a little bit froggy, sorry, try to think of the meaning of those words when you recite them, and which we will do again when we do our meditation motivation. Otherwise, although there's some benefit to saying words like that, prayers like that, unless you make contact with the meaning that you've meditated on previously, and you have an understanding of what that means, it doesn't have the same effect. And then we offer a short mandala, and within that mandala, the request to turn the wheel of Dharma to our spiritual guides. By offering this ground, anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon, visualized as a Buddha realm, may all migrators enjoy a pure realm. O holy and perfect pure Lama, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. So imagine your world, the land around you, our solar system, our galaxy, maybe even Mount Meru, like the axis of the galaxy, all of the enjoyments that we have access to, that we can see, even if we don't physically own them, common objects that we can see, the sun and the moon, the continents, the planets, and so forth, all of the enjoyments. Imagine that transformed as we ascend on the path into a pure land, and by offering that to the omniscient mind, who is our ultimate guru, creating the merit that will allow us to receive a rain of the profound and extensive teachings of the Buddha. Idam Guru Radna Mandalakam Niryatayami. Okay, good morning. Mikhail, Rachel, good to see everyone. So we're going to do a little meditation again to revivify the meaning of those prayers. So sit comfortably, spine straight, spine erect, eyes slightly closed, focusing down the sides of your nose. Place, first of all, your attention on the respiration, your breathing, to the exclusion of everything else. All other thoughts, let go. Just focus on your breathing without controlling it, just watching it. If your mind wanders, you start feeling, thinking of your feelings or other thoughts, bring it back forcefully, your attention forcefully to the breathing. Recognize when you're breathing in, when you're breathing out. Even as fine as recognizing the demarcation between an inhalation and an exhalation, just that fine moment when it changes direction. And then after some time, let go of your attention to the respiration. And instead, place your attention on the mental consciousness itself. The thoughts that are going through your mind, feelings, emotions, and try to recognize them as if they were clouds within an otherwise stainless sky. The clear light nature of our mind is the basis that we're going to try to recognize here. The conventional clear light nature, which is, in one sense, its lack of any obstruction to the arisal of thoughts or appearances to our mind. Its lack of obstruction to their leaving. It's always constant, always constantly there. It is perceived by wisdom in your mind. Maybe at first as the gaps between the thoughts when your mind is distracted to something. But even when the thoughts are present, recognizing their very appearance to the mind is due to the mind having no obstruction. In the same way that a big stone or a boulder occupies some space, thoughts occupy the spaciousness of our mind. If the ordinary space that a boulder occupies had any obstruction, the boulder couldn't be in its location. So the very fact that the boulder is present reveals that it is situated within the spaciousness of the non-obstructing contact of space. And in the same way, even when thoughts are present that might be distracting you, keep on nagging at you, your attention, their very presence indicates that the mental consciousness lacks any obstruction. So by shifting your focus away from the thoughts at moments like that to the underlying clear light nature of the mind, you can be left in a state of much less conceptuality, just almost just a sense of the spaciousness of the mind. This is called the conventional clear light nature of the mind. And is essentially equivalent to the conventional Buddha nature, Buddha potential. Ultimate Buddha potential is the emptiness of the mind. The conventional Buddha nature is just its lack of obstruction, also called the developmental Buddha nature, because we can, within our mind, we can develop all the good thoughts of the Buddhist path, bodhicitta, compassion, non-dual awareness. We can eliminate all our faults. So within that recognition of our mind, realizing that we have this opportunity right now due to the fact that we are currently experiencing our life of leisure and endowment that the Buddha called perfect human rebirth. Alive at a time when the Buddha Dharma is still alive and vibrant, not a dark age, a completely dark age. We are free from states that we will experience again in the future, of rebirth in hell, or as an animal, or as a hungry ghost, or in the God realms. We are free of states of, at present, being born in a country where the Dharma cannot be taught, maybe a barbarian kind of land. We have the inspiration of other practitioners and benefactors to help us, teachers and so forth. The Dharma is still understood by teachers and practitioners. It has not reached a nadir, like a dark age when even the words of the Dharma are not well understood. And we have a faith in the path presented by the Buddha. Think how wonderful this is. Rather than using this life for purposes of simple pleasures of this life alone, for power, for wealth, what are called the 8 worldly concerns. Rather than that, I can use this life to develop the causes of my gradual evolution into a real person. Maybe we can say, as the Jewish people say, I can't remember the term now, real mensch, real man, a real woman, a real person. Someone who is kind, compassionate, wise, truthful. I can use this life to become a bodhisattva, or approach that by working on the causes of becoming a bodhisattva that we will go over again today. Why would we do that? Because all living beings, even those that we find that we consider as troublesome or strangers, they have all been intimately related with us in previous lives. They've all been our mothers, our fathers, our best friends. They've helped us. They've saved our lives. Even our present enemies in other lifetimes have saved our lives numberless times over the course of beginningless time. Recognizing how valuable they are as objects of our compassion, which is the cause of our achieving eventual enlightenment, which would bring about our own welfare also. A feeling of endearment toward them, a responsibility to them to alleviate their suffering and to bring about their well-being. I think I'm going to participate today, listen to the teachings, contemplate them, meditate on them, the 3 kinds of wisdom of hearing, thinking, and meditating, for the purpose of generating these causes that can lead me to be able to perfectly alleviate the suffering of sentient beings, lead them out of cyclic existence into the higher states of the bodhisattva path, eventually into enlightenment. It's for that purpose I'm going to listen to, participate in the class this morning. I'm going to participate, listen, in order to become eventually a Buddha, in order to benefit all sentient beings. That's my goal, my ultimate goal. Whatever circumstances arise between now and then, just like stopping at a tea shop on a long trip, doesn't matter whether there's a bad meal or bad tea. Your goal is the end of your trip. Our goal is to achieve enlightenment for this benefit of sentient beings. So then relax, bring your attention back, present. Good to see you. We have a couple people that have been gone and come back. So I see, I didn't see before, Paul's here, Sudip is here, Shanka's come back from his watering of the plants and the animals. Rachel's in Israel. Michael, no, you're back? You're back in New Mexico. Okay, good, excellent. Mikhail, Tendran, Dwan, Richard, Anne. Palmo is here again. Hi, Palmo. And Sheila, of course. Okay, so before we begin, we've gotten to a certain point in the text. Are there any questions that are nagging on your brain? You do know, okay, Janice, one second, I'll just say, you do know there is a Facebook group page you can join where there are people put questions and answers and stuff. Janice, do you have a question?
I have just a quick question. I listened to the past two recordings because I wasn't able to be here. And
Okay.
you referenced a prayer that you had asked people to memorize.
Right.
I'm not sure what that was. And can it be put into the chat or whatever, wherever we put things on that Shantideva page, please?
Yeah. So are you talking about what Shantideva page? Okay, so Stephen is just posted something, if you see in the bottom of your screen there, Janet. That's,
I do, thank you.
So that's the prayer. In fact, it will come up later today. This is not a prayer. This is a verse from the Ornament of Clear Realizations that the future Buddha Maitreya taught to a Sangha. And in that, it says, Semke Pani Shendon Chir Yang Dak Sukbe Jangchuk De, which means mind generation, which is a synonym of bodhicitta. So mind generation is the wish to achieve full enlightenment for the benefit or welfare of sentient beings. So we're going to be talking about that. And that's a nice verse to memorize. We also put it up in Sanskrit in case you like sort of to do such things. You might wonder, well, even Tibetan, well, what's the purpose of doing that? One of the disciples of Atisha, main disciple, Drondemba, who is a layperson, who was it we were talking about before, Kristen, he didn't become a monk. He was living in the lay vows, perfectly. Also, just eating before midday and so forth, keeping some of the other vows. Once when he was walking to the monastery, some other monks behind him heard him reciting the Heart Sutra in Sanskrit. Of course, he's Tibetan, and most Tibetans didn't know Sanskrit. Some of the scholars did, lamas and so forth, teachers. So there's great benefit in memorizing some of these verses for auspiciousness in Tibetan or Sanskrit, leaving an imprint in your mind in the future to be amongst those like Drondempa, who, great practitioners and scholars. Sean, you have your hand up.
So last time you were talking about when they were getting into the debate about the sons of the conqueror, you mentioned that the continuums of like Buddha Shakyamuni and the continuums of ourselves are two different continuums. But how does Dharmakaya relate into that separation of continuums? I don't know if you can speak on that.
Yeah. So there are different debates about this. Some scholars say that when we achieve the Dharmakaya, we enter into the So the great ocean of Dharmakaya is all the same. That's not the general understanding, let's say, especially in the Gelugpa tradition or most of the Tibetan traditions. Generally, we say that each mind stream has its own continuum. When we achieve omniscience, when we become Buddhas, we have the same kind of consciousness of all the other Buddhas, all the numberless other Buddhas. So they're the same that way, but we do have different karmic connections with sentient beings. When you become a Buddha Shan, maybe you already are, I don't know, but if you, assuming that you're still not yet a Buddha, when you become a Buddha, you will have the ability to cultivate certain sentient beings more efficiently than other Buddhas. Why is that? They all have the same power, the same knowledge, the understanding how to lead sentient beings. But if you were to manifest and give teachings because of the karmic connection you made with certain sentient beings, you might have more of an impact on them than other Buddhas. So when Shakyamuni Buddha came to the world, it was with that understanding, when he was in Tushita heaven and took rebirth on earth, that he had a more beneficial connection with the sentient beings of this world at this time than any of the other Buddhas. So I hope that helps a little. That may not answer all your questions, but that's one aspect of it. Anyone else have a question? Okay. Snehi, did you get a chance to catch up, or are you still okay? You still have to listen to some. Okay. Okay. So we're going to continue, and the outline here. I'm using the sort of the on my iPad version. I have the book here, but I don't know. So someone can remind us, the three principal causes of bodhisattvas is the section we're about to start. What page is that in the written book? Anyone who has the book?
Page 42. 42, Venerable George.
Thank you, Paul. So the three principal causes of bodhisattvas. So Thupten Jinpa's translation says, the compassionate mind and non-dual cognition, as well as the awakening mind, these are the causes of bodhisattvas. So when we say, let's see here. So when we say the awakening mind, what we mean is bodhicitta. Jeffrey Hopkins translates that same verse. This is from Chandrakirti's root text, right? From the Madhyamaka Vatara Karika. Karika means verses. So Chandrakirti wrote the Karikas and then later composed his commentary to those verses. So the verses, Jeffrey Hopkins' translation of that says, the mind of compassion, instead of the compassionate mind, the mind of compassion, non-dual understanding, Jinpa says non-dual cognition, and the altruistic mind of enlightenment, which Jinpa translates as the awakening mind, are the causes of the children of the conquerors. So Thupten Jinpa has taken some poetic license. The actual Tibetan says the Jina Putra, or Tibetan says Galway Se, the children of the conquerors. Remember, we've talked about that before. It's one of the epithets of the bodhisattvas. They are the children of the Buddha. So the mind of compassion, non-dual understanding, and the altruistic mind of enlightenment are the causes of the children of the conqueror. So some of you posted on the Facebook group page some understanding of that. I think Shanka's mathematical mind tried to put it into some kind of formulaic with plus signs and some other comments were made. So let me make a little clarification about that. When we talk about, and we'll see here, the non-dual cognition or non-dual understanding. What that means is not, it's not talking about a direct realization of emptiness in the sense that the subject and object are fused into one, so there's not a duality of subject and object. It's not that meaning of duality. It's a general term. Non-duality here is meant to indicate emptiness. So there is a lack of a duality or dichotomy of the two extremes being non-existence at all and inherent existence. When we talk about the middle way, the Madhyamaka, the Madhya, the middle way, we're talking about a lack of, a middle way between the extremes. There are other points between that, even closer to the middle way, but if you negate too much, that's it's sort of like the extreme of, Westerners might say nihilism, but nihilism has a certain connotation in Western philosophy. So I don't like to use nihilism right there, but you can kind of understand when you say that nothing exists or that some part of things don't exist. The other extreme is that things really exist the way that they appear. In fact, that they are truly existent. Even if you don't hold that extreme, anything close to that, where there's some atom or a findability of inherent existence, that would be the other extreme. So let's continue. The text says, now, if the Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, and for Ron's sake, remind that means the hearers and solitary realizers, right? The Hinayana practitioners. If the Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas are born from the sovereign sages, the Munindra, that means the Buddhas, and the Munindra are born from the bodhisattvas, which is what we've talked about before, right? The first part of the verse was talking how the hearers and solitary realizers are born from the Buddhas, born from the Munindra, the king of sages, which means the Buddhas. And the Buddhas, the Munindras, are born from the bodhisattvas, which is what we just finished in our previous class. From whom are the bodhisattvas born? What are the causes of these bodhisattvas? Yeah, it doesn't say from whom. It says, what are the causes? What causes the bodhisattvas? It doesn't say from whom. So the text continues, the compassionate mind, that means great compassion, which will be explained below. That's one of the causes. The wisdom or cognition that realizes non-dual truth, or in other words, freedom from the dichotomy of extremes of thingness and no thingness. So that's a little bit thorny kind of thing. when we talk about extremes, there are different kinds of extremes you can talk about. One of the students in the class was talking about possibly the extreme of nirvana and samsara, right? It doesn't, that's not what this means. What is, when we talk about the extremes of peace and existence, peace meaning nirvana, and the extreme of existence, which means being fully embedded in cyclic existence without, without any recourse to get out of it. The samsara and nirvana. That's brought up in many of the Mahayana sutras as the choice of the bodhisattvas. The bodhisattvas don't want to fall into the extreme of existence or samsara, where they have no control. They're under the influence of karma and delusions. That's also the fear of the Shravakas and the Pratika Buddhas, the hearers and solitary realizers, the practitioners of the path. They want to escape from samsara, so that's one extreme they want to avoid. But the bodhisattvas also don't want to fall into the extreme of solitary peace or nirvana. So they have a fear of that, like in the Lama Chopa puja that we often recite, many of you recite. There's a verse that comes sort of planting the mind one-pointedly on the guru. So you are the guru, you are the yidam, you are the dakas and dakinis, and also protectors. From this point on, until I achieve enlightenment, I will seek no refuge other than you. Are you familiar with that verse, someone? So in the last line of that says, Sishi Jiktrol, liberate me from the fears, the jik of Sishi, which means peace, and Si means existence or becoming, and Shi means peace. That means samsara and nirvana. Free me from the fears of samsara and nirvana. So this is what the bodhisattvas have. They don't have a fear of just samsara, as the Hinayana arhats do, or the Hinayana practitioners. They also have a fear of falling into solitary peace, where you would give up your concern for other sentient beings and try to get out of this place for yourself. So that's not the extreme that's being talked about here. The extremes of thingness and no-thingness. Jeffrey Hopkins translated that in the Compassion in Tibetan Buddhism as freedom from the two extremes with regard to things, non-things, and so forth. I think sometimes Tupten Jinpa's translation gets it better. Sometimes Jeffrey Hopkins' translation gets it better. It's sort of like when Lama Tsongkhapa points to Jayananda, this commentator. Sometimes Jayananda got it right, and Lama Tsongkhapa praises him. Sometimes Jayananda makes a big mistake, and Lama Tsongkhapa doesn't hold back and explains how that's a mistake. So when we talk about, things and non-things, Jinpa translates thingness and no-thingness. Actually, the Tibetan says, ngopo, da ngopo mepa la sope kani su mepate, means that the non-existence of the duality, the two extremes of ngopo. Generally, ngopo means thing, like when we study tenets and so forth. In the lower tenets, ngopo means impermanent phenomena. But here, when we talk about the duality of things and non-things, or the extremes of thingness and no-thingness, it's talking about the two extremes of inherent existence, thingness, meaning that things really exist, and no thingness, meaning, how did he put it? Yeah, no thingness, meaning the extreme of annihilation, or maybe you could call it nihilism, or the fact that things don't exist at all, like they're just that they are illusions. It's not like they have any reality at all. Those are the two extremes that are being talked about here. So the causes are the compassionate mind, which will be explained below, the wisdom or cognition that realizes non-dual truth, or in other words, the freedom from the dichotomy of the extremes of thingness and no thingness, and so on, as well as the awakening mind, as well as bodhicitta. So we talk about compassionate mind, non-dual cognition, the cognition that realizes non-duality, and bodhicitta. These are the primary causes of bodhisattvas, who are the children of the conquerors. So you might say, well, if they're children of the conquerors are their cause. So why does it talk about these three? Well, we'll see in detail. You can generally we say that the hearers and solitary realizers are born from the conquerors, right? And if the bodhisattvas are the conqueror's sons, you might like to think about this a bit. It sort of seems like the same situation. They are born from the conquerors. But here we're talking about it in a different way. The commentary, that is Chandrakirti's auto-commentary, states that the awakening mind, the bodhicitta referred to here, is as presented in a passage it cites from a sutra. And that sutra reads, having realized the suchness of one's own reality, one generates the mind with the thought, quote, I will help sentient beings realize the ultimate nature of things. That's what one thinks. And this thought is called the awakening mind. This thought is called bodhicitta. So this is from Chandrakirti's own auto-commentary to his verse. So I'd like to explain again here, when I was just mentioning again, sometimes Thupten Jinpa has it better, sometimes Hopkins has it better. Here, Hopkins' translation is better. Hopkins says, one realizes the suchness of phenomena and generates the thought, I will cause sentient beings to understand this nature of phenomena. This mind, which is generated, is called the altruistic mind of enlightenment. It's called bodhicitta. So Thupten Jinpa has made a little error here. He says, having realized the suchness of one's own reality. Some of you won't have any idea why this is a problem. Paul might, or some of the others who know Tibetan. The Tibetan says, Rangi, which is an instrumental, means oneself realizes the suchness of reality, rather than one having realized the suchness of one's own reality. That would seem to imply you've realized the emptiness of yourself. That's not what this is saying. This is saying, as Jeffrey has it better, one realizes the suchness of phenomena in general, rather than one realizes the suchness of one's own reality. So this is one way of expressing bodhicitta. What is this? It says, this citation focuses on only one aspect of the objective of the awakening mind. And so what is presented here does not complete its definition. Jeffrey says, this does not indicate all the characteristics of an altruistic mind generation because it takes cognizance of only one part, its object of intent. So what does that mean? object of intent. So there are two aspects here when we talk about bodhicitta. The object of achievement and the object of intent. The object of intent means you're intending to bring about the welfare of sentient beings. So that's this sutra quotation says, I will help sentient beings realize the ultimate nature of things. In other words, I'm going to work to bring about their welfare, right? I'm going to teach them emptiness so they get out of this mess of cyclic existence. That quotation doesn't indicate the object the object of attainment of bodhicitta, which is to attain enlightenment in order to do this. This is only talking about one part of the definition. So this citation focuses only on one aspect of the objective of the awakening mind. So what is presented here does not complete its definition. Jeffrey's translation is a little bit better because it mentions it only takes cognizance of one part, its object of intention. Objects of intent, cheta jawa in Tibetan. So when we talk about why a text is written, like some of you are studying Abhisamaya Alamkara, the 70 topics with Venerable Sanghi Khandro. Some of you will study it later, the whole text. Usually a text has an intended disciple. So the intended disciple of the Abhisamaya Alamkara, this is just as an aside, is when we talk about intended, the intended disciple is bodhisattvas who have entered into the path. It's not for hearers and solitary realizers, although they can read it and they can learn a lot. It's not for people who have not yet entered into the path. Abhisamaya Alamkara is mainly for bodhisattvas who have entered the path and how to progress along the path. So when we talk about intention here, it's talking about that kind of sense of intention. Also, one reads in the commentary. So this Tupten Chimpa is continuing. That means in Chandrakirti's auto commentary, one should definitely generate the mind. That means one should generate bodhicitta with the thought, I will rescue the entire world from suffering and definitely connect them to Buddhahood. So that's mainly talking about, here too, because it does not mention awakening itself, which is the object of attainment. It is only a partial definition. So that kind of statement that bodhicitta is the thought, I will definitely generate the mind with the thought, I will rescue the entire world, all the worldly beings from suffering and connect them to Buddhahood. This is talking about the object of intent. That's your intention is to lead sentient beings out of suffering and put them into stable happiness of Buddhahood. Okay, so those two quotations are only, they're both talking about the same thing, one part of the definition of bodhicitta. So the text continues, therefore the commentary, again, clearly states that it's talking about the auto commentary of Chandrakirti, clearly states when showing how the awakening mind arises in dependence on compassion, in that context, it shows that such a mind focuses on the object of attainment, awakening itself. So in that context, it's only talking about the other objective of bodhicitta, the achievement of enlightenment. And that says, and again, Tupten Chimpa puts in parentheses the awakening mind, but Jeffrey translates it as one aspires to perfectly attain Buddhahood alone. I must achieve Buddhahood, which is the cause from which emerges both the excellent taste of the ambrosia, the nectar of sublime Dharma, holy Dharma, which is characterized by the cessation of all distorted conceptualizations, and Buddhahood, which is the one which embodies true friendship to all beings. Maybe you remember at the very beginning of the text when there was a Lama Tsongkhapa wrote some verses that were not in Chandrakirti when he talked about the unusual friend, the Buddha. So the Buddha who embodies the true friendship of all beings. So this is another time in Chandrakirti's text when he's talking about bodhicitta, mainly emphasizing the object of attainment. In Tibetan, we say topja, or drupja, that which is to be attained. So both of these definitions lack to give the total definition of bodhicitta. In light of this, the text says, Lama Tsongkhapa's text says, in light of this, the following should be accepted as the full definition of bodhicitta, the full definition of the awakening mind, the mind of enlightenment. It is the wish to attain unsurpassed enlightenment. That means not just the enlightenment of a hearer or solitary realizer, unsurpassed samyak sam bodhi. That means not just the bodhi of the hearers and solitary realizers, their nirvana, but the enlightenment of a Buddha. It is the wish to attain unsurpassed enlightenment, the object of attainment, for the benefit of all sentient beings, its intended objective. So one of you was asking earlier about the verse that I suggested some of you memorize. So this is the verse from Abhisamayalankara. It says, Semke Pani Shendon Chir Yangdak Zope Jangchubdu. So mind generation, which means the awakening mind, is the wish to achieve enlightenment. Semke Pani, Semke Pani Shendon Chir, for the welfare of others, the wish to achieve enlightenment. So based out of the motivating, wanting to bring about the welfare of sentient beings, which has 2 points, right? The welfare of sentient beings. Welfare of sentient beings means to alleviate their suffering, take them out of suffering, the first noble truth, right? And set them into enlightenment, stable, everlasting happiness. Okay, we'll talk more about that later. So in light of this, the following should be accepted as a full definition of bodhicitta. It is the wish to attain unsurpassed enlightenment, the enlightenment of a Buddha, which is the object of attainment, for the benefit of all sentient beings, which are its, here it says its object of its intended objective. So Jeffrey says, thus he clearly mentions taking cognizance of the object of attainment, one's own enlightenment. Therefore, the complete definition of altruistic mind generation is asserted to be the wish to achieve highest enlightenment, the object of attainment, for the sake of all sentient being, the objects of intent. Those who, they are why you're generating this. This is how this mind is defined in the explanation of the commentary. So here, explanation of the commentary is Jayananda's text, the only commentary to the Sanskrit commentary to Chandrakirti's auto commentary. Remember, Chandrakirti wrote his verses, the Karakas. He wrote his auto commentary to that. The only commentary in Sanskrit that existed of that to that is Jayananda's commentary. So that's when he says the explanation of the commentary. This is how this mind is defined in the explanation of the commentary as well. That's good. Jayananda got that right, which is excellent. There is thus no divergence with respect to defining bodhicitta between Chandrakirti's tradition and the tradition that is presented in the Abhisamaya Alamkara, the ornament of clear realizations. Remember that verse that we just talked about. Mind generation is for the welfare of sentient beings to aim to desire full enlightenment. Make sense? How are you doing? Some of you, this is old soup, warmed over tukpa. Some of you may be hearing for the first time. So let's go back for a second. When it says, just above this, there was a quotation. The awakening, Jimpa says, the awakening mind, or Jeffrey says, is it rather than saying the awakening mind, says one aspires to perfectly attain Buddhahood alone, which is, so what is Buddhahood? The cause from which emerges both the excellent taste of the ambrosia of the holy Dharma, sublime Dharma, characterized by the cessation of all distorted conceptualizations, and that which embodies the true friendship to all beings. So there are three things here. Some scholars say this indicates the three or four kayas. Remember when we talk about the 3 or 4 kayas? Stephen, what are the 3 kayas?
Well, there's the Sambhoga Kaya, the
I like that. You've got your hands.
the Nirmanakaya, and the Dharmakaya.
Those are the 2 kayas.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm sorry. You said
Sambhoga
Sambhoga Kaya,
Nirmanakaya, and Dharmakaya.
Okay, so we can elaborate. So first of all, you say 2 kayas. Talk about the Rupa Kaya
The Rupakaya, yeah.
and the Dharmakaya. So Rupa Kaya has 2 kinds, which Stephen just explained: the Nirmanakaya and the Sambhoga Kaya, the emanation body and the enjoyment body. Those are bodies that are for the benefit of sentient beings. And then the Dharmakaya is for the benefit of oneself. Those are when we talk about 3 kayas. We talk about the 4 kayas. Snehi, well, how would you augment those 3 kayas to get the 4th kaya? What is the 4th kaya? Do you know?
The Swabhavika Kaya.
Right? Which is how would you translate often in English? As a,
So I think of it as the ultimate nature of the mind of the Buddha.
right. Sometimes we call it the nature body.
Nature
So
body.
we can talk about 4 kayas: the Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, the wisdom Dharmakaya, and the nature Dharmakaya. So the Dharmakaya has 2 kinds. The wisdom Dharmakaya is the omniscient mind. That's usually what we think of as Dharmakaya. But the nature of that mind, its ultimate nature, the emptiness, as Snehi said, of that Buddha's mind is called the nature body, or the nature Dharmakaya. So some people say that this verse this little passage we said, one aspires to perfectly attain Buddhahood alone. That's just saying what bodhicitta is. The cause from which emerges both the excellent taste of the ambrosia of sublime Dharma, we say what's the other word, ambrosia, we say nectar. Usually in Tibetan we say dutsi, which means the amrita. Amrita. You know the word Amrita? Paul, what does Amrita mean in Sanskrit? Do you know?
I'm not sure I remember the etymology. I mean, they usually just mean something like nectar or elixir or something
Right.
like that.
So Mrita means death.
Oh, right.
Prefix Amrita means not. So it means the deathless, that which is deathless, the death, something that brings about
Right.
long life.
A fountain of youth. There you go. A fountain of youth.
Fountain of youth, yeah. So Amrita is the word that the Tibetans translate as dutsi, which here Shimpa translates as ambrosia. Some people just translate it as nectar or something like that. So, so Buddhahood is the cause from which emerges both the excellent taste of the Amrita of the Sadharma, the holy Dharma, which is characterized by the cessation of all distorted conceptualizations. That's the second thing. And that which embodies the true friendship to all beings. So this is, in one way, this is talking about either the 3 or 4 kayas. So the one where it says is the cause from which emerges both the excellent taste of the Amrita of the holy Dharma. This is talking about the enjoyment body, since the Sambhogakaya, or the enjoyment body, only teaches the Mahayana. The second thing, characterized by the cessation of all distorted conceptions, this is said to be the Jnana Dharmakaya, the wisdom Dharmakaya. When you would achieve the wisdom Dharmakaya, all distorted conceptualizations are ceased. Or another way you can say that this is referring to the nature body, the Svabhavikakaya. And then the last line, that which embodies true friendship to all beings, or the one who embodies true friendship. This refers to the Nirmanakaya, because the Nirmanakaya can appear to all beings who have pure karma, whereas the Sambhogakaya only appears to Arya Bodhisattvas. So that may be more than you want to know about that citation. But this is the kind of thing that the scholars, the Gelugpa scholars, when they're reading this, they say this has this implication. It's the Buddhahood has these aspects. It has the aspect of Nirmanakaya, Sambhogakaya, wisdom Dharmakaya, and nature Dharmakaya. So as we said before, in light of this, the following should be accepted as the full definition of bodhicitta, the awakening mind. It is the wish to attain unsurpassed enlightenment, which is the object you're wishing to attain, object of attainment, for the benefit of all sentient beings who are its objects of intention, intended objects. This is how the mind is defined in the explanation of the commentary we just said. And thus, there is no divergence between these definitions, between Chandrakirti's tradition and the tradition of the Abhisamayalamkara. Chandrakirti sometimes talks about bodhicitta meaning the aim to achieve enlightenment. Sometimes he talked about it as the aim to take sentient beings out of suffering and place them in happiness and so forth. But finally, he talks about the two together, just as in the Abhisamayalamkara. Understanding these 3 factors, and what are those 3? Compassion, non-dual awareness, and awakening mind, as being the cause of the bodhisattvas, is the tradition of the precious garland, which is a text by Nagarjuna, right? When we talked about Chandrakirti's text, Madhyamaka Avatara, Madhyamaka meant fundamental wisdom. That's how we refer to the text by Nagarjuna. And Avatara can mean entering into or supplementing. So how did Chandrakirti supplement Chandrakirti's fundamental wisdom. He supplemented it or entered it into it with quotations, other quotations from Nagarjuna, such as from the Rinchen Tengwa, the Precious Garland, Ratnavali, which in that there's a very famous verse. If you've ever had a chance to receive teachings on the Precious Garland, this is one of the verses. Did I put down what the verse? I didn't put down what the verse number is, but anyway, if one aspires for oneself and for the world to attain the unexcelled enlightenment, samyak sambodhi, the roots of this are awakening mind, bodhicitta, as firm as Mount Meru, the king of mountains, compassion extending in all directions, and gnosis, which is not rooted in duality. Okay, I'm going to have to take a moment and I'll come back. Sorry about that. After 7 courses of antibiotics for a urinary tract infection, I think I have another one. So I had to treat that. So this quotation from the Precious Garland, very famous. If one aspires for oneself and for the world, Jeffrey Hopkins translates it a little bit differently, and I think probably better, because it says, Jimpa says, if one aspires for oneself and for the world to attain unexcelled enlightenment. Jeffrey translates this, if you and the world wish to gain the highest enlightenment. There's a little bit different meaning there. If you and the world wish to gain, if you want to gain enlightenment, this is what you need, the causes. And if the world wants to achieve enlightenment, these are the causes. Whereas Jimpa says, if one aspires for oneself and for the world, as though one is aspiring for the world to achieve enlightenment. A little bit different. Anyway, the roots of it are an awakening mind, as firm as Mount Meru, the king of mountains. So what does that mean? That means bodhicitta, which is stable and firm, like Mount Meru. Compassion extending in all directions. And gnosis, or wisdom, exalted wisdom, not rooted in duality. Or Jeffrey says, wisdom which relies not on duality. Although this citation from the Precious Garland presents these to be the roots of awakening, right? He said, if one aspires for oneself and for the world, or as Jeffrey says, if you and the world wish to gain the highest enlightenment, this is kind of like the roots of awakening, and does not explicitly state these to be the roots of bodhisattvas. The word root has the connotation of being first, other connotations also. And furthermore, since the context here is the presentation of the 3 principal causes of that first stage, from its context, one can infer that these 3 are the principal causes of bodhisattvas. So although in Precious Garland, Nagarjuna is saying that these are the roots of enlightenment, they could be taken as the principal causes of the bodhisattvas. The demonstration of these three factors as being the cause of bodhisattvas in the Madhyamaka takes place in the context of asking if the hearers and solitary realizers, the Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, are born from the Buddhas, and the Buddhas are born from the bodhisattvas, from where do the bodhisattvas take birth? How did they take? What are their causes? Given this, such causes cannot be understood in terms of the explanatory cause of the bodhisattvas. Rather, they must be understood as the bodhisattva's producing cause. So this is a little bit, to me, a little bit unclear what he's saying there. Jeffrey Hopkins' translation of that phrase is a little bit better. He says, therefore, these three are not suitable to be causes for positing someone as a bodhisattva. Jeffrey says, explanatory cause of the bodhisattva. We say, how do you posit a bodhisattva? How do you define a bodhisattva? A bodhisattva is posited as someone who has spontaneous bodhicitta, right? Remember when we talked about it before, just having, bodhicitta, which is derived with effort, is not how you posit a bodhisattva. You can't say that someone who has wishing bodhicitta alone and not engaging bodhicitta, someone who has not actual spontaneous bodhicitta, you wouldn't call them a bodhisattva. You wouldn't posit them as a bodhisattva. You might say they're a proto-bodhisattva. Some Buddhist traditions, some Tibetan traditions say that you are a bodhisattva when you take the bodhisattva vow. Have you heard that? Now I'm a bodhisattva, I've taken the bodhisattva vow. Simply taking the vow is not a reason to posit someone as a bodhisattva. You can't say that someone who's taken the bodhisattva vow is a bodhisattva because they don't necessarily have spontaneous bodhicitta. The cause of positing someone as a bodhisattva is having spontaneous bodhicitta. So Jeffrey translates this little thing that we just read. Therefore, these three are not suitable to be causes for positing someone as a bodhisattva. They are the causes producing a bodhisattva. Do you see a difference? Sheila, what do you think? The difference between positing someone as a bodhisattva and the causes producing a bodhisattva. Are you there? Press your space bar to speak. You can temporarily unmute that way. That's the easiest way.
I'm processing. I couldn't answer that question.
Say again?
I don't think I can answer that question.
Okay. Okay, so let me see. Sudip, do you follow here? What do you think?
Venerable, just coming off of mute. Yeah, so my understanding is that this is a causal process versus an effect, right? So the positing of the bodhisattva is you have become a bodhisattva at that point, whereas
right.
these three factors are the process of the causal process that produces a bodhisattva, is my understanding.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, I think that's pretty close. Yeah, makes sense. So then right after that it says question. If there's some qualm that Lama Tsong is bringing up. Some other people might say this. Some other scholars might have said something like this. Is the bodhisattva for whom these three factors are taken to be the causes, at very least a bodhisattva who is on the initial stage of having entered the path? So what are these three causes? Okay. Great compassion, non-dual understanding, bodhicitta. Are these three factors, these causes, are they taken to be the causes at very least a bodhisattva who is on the initial stage of having entered the path? So what does that mean? The bodhisattva who is on the initial stage of having entered the path. Where would that be? Karen, do you have an idea of a bodhisattva?
Well,
who
I
has
said
entered?
the accumulation, the path of accumulation, but I don't know that that's right.
Yeah, so the beginning of the path of accumulation, that's the implication here. Are these to be taken as causes of, at very least, a bodhisattva who is on the initial stage of the path of accumulation, having entered the Mahayana path, right? When you enter the path, the first path that you enter is the path of accumulation. If so, this person says, then it is not correct to say that the Mahayana awakening mind is his cause, that bodhicitta is his cause. For the moment such a mind is attained, the person is already by definition a bodhisattva, right? This is what we were talking about before. Trying to be, the person's being very analytical here. Similarly, positing the wisdom or gnosis that does not tend toward any of the two extremes, positing that as a cause of the bodhisattva is also untenable, unreasonable, not right, because bodhisattvas first generate conventional awakening mind, conventional bodhicitta, this is what this person is saying, and subsequently engage in the practices of the six perfections. They don't have wisdom to begin with. That's what the person is saying. It is only when the bodhisattva is training in the perfection of wisdom that he or she trains in the gnosis, the jnana, the higher wisdom, not tending toward the two extremes. That's what this person is saying. They're still saying, now, if you do not take this reference to be the initial stage of bodhisattva, this is not the cause of an initial bodhisattva on the path of accumulation. This contradicts the statements describing that bodhisattva or that person as a new moon-like bodhisattva or a bodhisattva that resembles the sprout of a medicinal tree. That's what we were talking about in earlier quotations, right? That you praise this initial bodhisattva. It's like the crescent moon when it first appears from being no moon at all to the first crescent, or like the sprouts of a medicinal plant that you have to nurture. So Lama Tsongkhapa says in his reply to this qualm, since the exact faults you have leveled above will ensue, we do not accept the second option, but subscribe to the first. It sounds so eloquent sometimes. Sometimes it's more difficult to understand. Jeffrey translates, the second position is not asserted because it would incur the fault as explained. That means there would be the fault of contradicting the quotation about the crescent moon and nurturing the sprout of a medicinal plant if this was not an initial bodhisattva, if this was not the cause of someone at the beginning of the path of accumulation. Therefore, the first position is asserted, but it does not entail the faults stated above. To me, that's a little bit clearer. So since the exact faults you have leveled above will ensue for the second case, we don't accept that, but we subscribe to the first, that we say that it is an initial bodhisattva. Nonetheless, the fault that you have cited earlier will not arise for us because the generation of bodhicitta prior to the bodhisattva stage is understood in terms of the meditative cultivation of bodhicitta. It does not refer to the actual generated mind that has arisen on the basis of such cultivation. So what is that saying? When we talk about the awakening mind here, the bodhicitta is one of the three causes of the bodhisattva. It's not referring to actual spontaneous bodhicitta. It's talking about the cultivation of bodhicitta through effort, the contrived bodhicitta that you're meditating on in order to eventually have spontaneous bodhicitta. So when it says the cause of the bodhisattva is bodhicitta, in that amongst those causes, that cause is not talking about spontaneous bodhicitta, it's talking about contrived bodhicitta that one is cultivating before entering into the bodhisattva path, right? As soon as you have the spontaneous bodhicitta, you will already be on the bodhisattva path. Doris, what do you think? Makes sense?
You knew that I was crossing things there.
No, I saw your hand here, sort of like.
Yeah.
You weren't quite sure.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Oh, it does. It's just that as soon as you start saying it, I tighten up and then I have to
Okay.
to lose my mind.
Yeah. Sudapa, I'm sorry, I forgot that you raised a question there. So what thought do you have?
So Venerable, I wanted to just go back and clarify this statement for myself, which is since the exact faults you have leveled above will ensue, we do not accept the second option, but subscribe to the first. And I just want to make sure that I understand those two options clearly. So is it correct to say that the first option is stated in the at least was initial, if so, then it is not correct to say that the Mahayana awakening mind is his cause for the, so essentially he's sort of comparing, he's asserting that, if you already have bodhicitta, then how can you how can you be a bodhisattva on the initial stage? And then he's talking about a similar thing with the wisdom realizing emptiness. Is that the first option? And is the wisdom realizing
right above when it's saying here? Well, if I read Jeffries here, the second position is not asserted because it would incur the fault as explained.
And so what is that second position exactly?
The second position would be that this is someone, that this is a cause of the initial, this is a cause, go back here. So the question that was posed, the quam, if the bodhisattva for whom these three factors is taken to be the causes, at very least, a bodhisattva who is on the initial stage of having entered the path. So that's the first, right? Is it the cause of someone who is just entered into the bodhisattva path? If so, then it is not correct to say that the Mahayana awakening mind, the bodhicitta, is his cause.
Right. So if that's the first cause, does the second position start with the word similarly positing the gnosis that does not tend toward any of the two extremes as a cause of bodhi? I just want to be clear that the first cause was that first sentence, and the second cause is that second sentence starting with the word similarly, or not the second, but the third sentence, I guess.
Yeah, similarly positing the gnosis that does not tend toward any of the two extremes as a cause of the bodhisattvas is also untenable, because bodhisattva was first generate conventional awakening mind. So that second qualm is the gnosis. He's saying that this could not be a cause because they don't have the gnosis before entering the path.
Right. And Lama Tsongkhapa, if I'm understanding this correctly, is rejecting that second option and is responding to the first option.
Right. He's accepting the first option. He's saying that these are referring to causes of the initial bodhisattva who's just entered the path. And we have to understand what, in that context, then what is meant by bodhicitta, non-dual awareness, and compassion. So
he's saying we do not accept the second option, right, in the very first sentence of the reply, but we do subscribe to the first. And then he goes on.
So he's saying, when he said we do not accept the second option, that means he does not accept that
the wisdom realizing emptiness.
That the wisdom realizing emptiness only comes afterwards. He's saying that you can have wisdom realizing emptiness before entering the path. Whereas the Quam is saying, first you generate bodhicitta, then you practice the perfections, eventually you get to wisdom and you have non-dual awareness. Lama Tsongkhapa is saying that's not necessarily the case. There's some probably few bodhisattvas that only generate wisdom of emptiness later. Why is that? We talked about it before.
Yep. It's because of I think the dull-minded and the sharp faculty.
Right. Sharp faculties. But in addition to that, even those of dull faculty, in order to generate bodhicitta, have to have a confidence that enlightenment can be attained. And in order to do that, you need to have some insight into emptiness, that you can eliminate the delusions and so forth. That's another subtle point. So
thank you.
So Richard, you have a comment, you have a thought.
Yes, Venerable, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I sort of understood this to mean that the second option was the sentence that begins, if you do not take the reference to be the initial stage bodhisattva, and the first reference to be taking this to be at least a bodhisattva who is on the initial stage of having entered the path. And then the way I kind of read it was, we do not accept the second option, which is that this is not a reference to somebody who's not yet an initial stage bodhisattva. In other words, somebody who's not even a baby bodhisattva, because that would certainly contradict the statement describing him as a new moonlight bodhisattva. But then with the first one, he's saying that, yes, we ascribe to the first. That is the issue. We're talking about a initial stage bodhisattva, but there isn't any fault. And he explains why there isn't any fault. Right. Did I misunderstand that?
Well, I'm not sure. I'll have to go back again, but I think it's the when he's saying the second option. I think the second option is talking about this person's qualm that the bodhisattva could have, that non-dual awareness, that realizing emptiness couldn't be a cause of the bodhisattva, because the bodhisattva, one can become a bodhisattva, one does, he's almost stating definitely, one does become a bodhisattva, and then only later realizes emptiness. I think that's the second position that he's refuting here. Okay.
Okay, I'll look at it again.
Yeah. Think about it. There's sometimes becomes a bit wordy. Okay, so the reply: since the exact faults you have leveled above will ensue for the second option, we do not accept that second option, but we accept the first. That is that these are the causes of someone who's an initial bodhisattva. Okay, but as you said, there's some sort of fine tuning here that has to be explained what these causes are. And so we said, nonetheless, the fault you have cited earlier will not arise for us, because the generation of the awakening mind, generation of bodhicitta, prior to the bodhisattva stage, is understood in terms of the meditative cultivation of bodhicitta. That means bodhicitta with effort, not spontaneous bodhicitta. This is talking about the cause of the bodhisattva being the cultivation, thinking about bodhicitta with effort, even having it sometimes, even having bodhicitta for a couple of seconds or a minute, but only through effort, having used reasoning and so forth, thinking of the defects of self-cherishing, the benefits of cherishing others, how kind sentient beings have been and so forth. Putting all those factors together, one might develop moments where I must achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings, like we do in motivation at the beginning of our class. I'm going to do this in order to achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings. That kind of mind, which is meditatively cultivating bodhicitta, it's not yet reached the point where it has become spontaneous in one's own consciousness, so that it will not need reasoning again in the future. That's why we have to motivate again at the beginning of each class, right? If it was spontaneous, we would have. I remember oftentimes at Deer Park at dinner, Geshe Zopa would invite us over for dinner, and Lama Zopa might be there during when Geshe Zopa was teaching. Lama Zopa Rinpoche would be there, and you know how Lama Zopa Rinpoche needs to. Many of you know, before you eat, there's a long dedication. I see Karen smiling, Doris smiling. I don't know. Some of you know, it might take 20 minutes before you get to the eat. And Geshe Zopa would just be saying, "Okay, let's eat." And is like Lama Zopa is like terrified here. There was no dedication. It's almost as though Geshe Zopa's mind was already spontaneous bodhicitta. Already realized the generation and completion stage of highest yoga tantra. No need, it's already spontaneous. No need to say all these words or to think with effort. I'm going to do this for the benefit of sentient beings. So it's a little bit like that. Okay, make sense? David, does that make sense to you? Have you ever I would say endured? Have you ever experienced the dedication, the motivation before eating the meal with Lama Zopa? Yeah. Okay.
On a number of occasions, we've had the dedication.
Yeah. Okay.
Is the story true, Venerable George, about Lama Zopa Rinpoche on the plane and somebody asking him to give the blessing or the dedication before everybody ate? And then the plane landed and nobody ate?
I haven't heard that story, but that's reminiscent. Yeah, that what do they call it? What's the word? Apocryphal? What is it?
Apocryphal.
Apocryphal. There's something it could be very well. So so this doesn't refer to the actual generated mind, spontaneous mind that has arisen on the basis of such cultivation. So when we talk about bodhicitta as being cause of the bodhisattva, it's talking about the cultivation of bodhicitta with effort before you've actually had spontaneous bodhicitta. Might be a long, long time. For example, just as there is the experience of tasting the bark of sugarcane and the experience of tasting what is inside the bark, in the same manner, the mere thought, I will attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all beings, is only a reflection that follows after the words. This is similar to the tasting of the bark of sugarcane. So what is this talking about? They're very famous in the Prajnaparamita sutras and the commentaries. It talks about bark-like, sugarcane bark-like bodhicitta, and the actual taste of the actual sugarcane. So what is it? If you've been in India, if you ever go to these little vendors on the street, they have this big machine, a press. They put the sugar cane through, and they get out all the sugar cane juice, right? Have you experienced that, Violet? Do they have in Singapore like that also, or is it just in India? They have also, yeah. So
Yes, we have it.
yeah. So the sugar cane juice is like the real taste, right? If you were just to, if the vendor has some pieces that have been cut off the ends, he hands you one and you chew on it, you get a little bit, you're eating the skin, you're biting on the skin, and you get a little bit of some similar to that taste, but not like the sugar cane itself, right? Let me read how Jeffrey translates this here. He says, because the mere thought, I will attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings, is just verbal understanding. It is like the tasting of the bark of sugarcane, or you could say, what did I say, bark? Skin, the outer layer. It's like tasting the bark of sugarcane. And although it is called an altruistic mind generation, it is not. Just the words, I will achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings, like we say in our motivation at the beginning. It's not actual bodhicitta. It's just verbalization, or not just mere words, but we haven't yet developed that spontaneously. Through having trained in this mind of enlightenment, bodhicitta, in accordance with the quintessential instructions, special experience is generated. That experience meaning spontaneous bodhicitta, that can redirect the mind well. This is like tasting sugar cane itself. Therefore, it is a fully qualified mind generation. Okay, or as Chimpa translates, although it is called generating the awakening mind, it is not the actual generated mind. In contrast to the extraordinary experience that has arisen on the basis of training in accordance with the instructions of cultivating awakening mind, that experience that can wonderfully bring about an effect in one's mind is analogous to tasting the actual sugar cane inside the bark. It is therefore the genuine generation of the awakening mind. So what are we talking about here when we talk about bodhicitta as a cause of the bodhisattva? We're talking about like the bark-like sugarcane, right? With this in mind, a sutra called Invoking the Altruistic Resolve states, just like the bark, it is but speech. The real mind is the taste. So, Thupten Jinpa is applauded here for recognizing the correct sutra. This is a famous sutra invoking the altruistic resolve, and invoking, what is it? It's laksam. Laksam is the universal responsibility, the last cause before bodhicitta in the 7 causes in effect, right? Recognizing all sentient beings have been your mother, remembering their kindness, determining to repay their kindness, affectionate love, great compassion. Then comes the 6th cause, laksam, or adhyasaya in Sanskrit. It's not a word that I've come across, the Sanskrit word for that, the exceptional resolve or universal responsibility, special thought. So that's the name of the sutra. Jeffrey Hopkins, in his translation, which I know at least Don has a copy of also, he calls it the questions of Adyashaya. Adyashaya is not, sometimes there are a lot of different chapters within sutras that are called the question of so-and-so. It's not the question of Adyashaya. This is the actual invoking or inciting the altruistic resolve sutra. Questions of, yeah. So Jeffrey translates it, but Jeffrey's translation is better. He says, verbalization is like the bark. Verbalization is like the bark. Contemplating the meaning is like the taste. As to how given that the bodhisattva of higher mental acumen seek the bodhisattvas of higher mental acumen seek the view of suchness first and then generate the awakening mind, the second fault does not arise. This will be explained below. And we've already alluded to that several times. Bodhisattvas of sharp faculties. When we talk about faculties, it's not just wisdom, it's talking about mindfulness, concentration, other factors, and wisdom. So when we talk about sharp faculties, that means all those faculties are sharper, but especially wisdom. Those bodhisattvas, because they're capable of realizing emptiness, not necessarily, not directly, just having a realization of it before entering the path. And on the basis of that, they're able to practice equalizing and exchanging self and others, which helps them to develop actual bodhicitta more quickly. So that fault doesn't arise, that qualm that said, how could non-dual awareness, how could that be a cause of the bodhisattva? Because they only get that later. That cause doesn't arise because there are some bodhisattvas who develop that wisdom beforehand. And maybe even those of dull faculty, as I said, in order to ascertain that enlightenment is possible, they need some kind of insight into emptiness. So the text continues. Non-dual awareness does not refer here to the awareness of the absence of subject and object duality. Remember, we talked about that before. It doesn't mean a direct realization, non-dual. Like when you talk about in samadhi, when you have a non-duality, it's though your mind is fused with the object that you're contemplating, you're meditating on. It doesn't refer to that. In the commentary, it is explained in terms of the wisdom free from the two extremes. That's what was talked about, thingness and non-thingness before. So the two extremes means the extreme of, I said before, earlier in the class, the extreme of believing things have some kind of inherent existence, whether completely inherently existent or something close to that. On the other hand, the thought that things don't exist at all, that they are illusions, not like illusions, they are illusions, that they're, it's just your imagination, that conventional phenomena are just illusions. That's position of even some Buddhist scholars, that phenomena have no existence, real existence at all. Lama Tsongkhapa's position is that conventional phenomena are validly existent, but they don't exist the way that they appear. Okay, that will be coming later. In the commentary, it is explained in terms of wisdom free from the two extremes, which can arise prior to being a bodhisattva, so there is no inconsistency here. Those who interpret this wisdom in terms of the ultimate awakening mind are entirely missing its proper context. I think there were some questions about this before also. Ultimate bodhicitta. What is ultimate bodhicitta? Who can I ask? Palmo, Venerable Palmo? You don't know? Where's the other Venerable? Oh, Kendrin. What is ultimate bodhicitta? You have to unmute. You can
If you're on a different page, the spacebar doesn't work.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, ultimate bodhicitta is the what's in the mind, in the continuum of the mind of a person who's had a direct. When you have a direct realization of emptiness, that bodhicitta, the uncontrived bodhicitta that you already have in your continuum, now is the bodhicitta in the continuum of mind that's realized emptiness.
Okay.
So it's the emptiness of the.
So is the uncontrived bodhicitta, the spontaneous bodhicitta in your mind, once you've realized emptiness directly, that uncontrived, that spontaneous bodhicitta is called ultimate bodhicitta?
No, that's still conventional bodhicitta.
Yes,
but
okay, good.
Yeah, it's just what's in the continuum of mind that is in direct equipoise on emptiness, who has previously generated.
Right. In the continuum of a bodhisattva, so that
Right.
means someone who has conventional bodhicitta, the direct realization of emptiness. It's not simply as I think I might have alluded to this, or maybe on the Facebook page. It's not just any realization of emptiness. Ultimate bodhicitta is talking about direct realization of emptiness within the continuum of a bodhisattva, someone who has conventional bodhicitta. So before that, before the path of seeing, before one has direct realization of emptiness, one is called a conventional bodhisattva. One becomes an ultimate bodhisattva when one has realized emptiness directly. So that's important because in various sutras, like in the Vajracetaka, the Vajracutter Sutra, and in other sutras, it talks about bodhisattva, assuming that one understands that you're talking about an ultimate bodhisattva. So when we talk about bodhisattva, you can talk about conventional bodhisattva, which means on the paths of accumulation and preparation, or an ultimate bodhisattva on the paths of seeing and meditation, right? On the path of no more learning, you're no longer a bodhisattva, you're a Buddha, so it's not referring to that. Ultimate bodhisattva means bodhisattva on the path of seeing and path of meditation.
Is this similar, Venerable, to the terms like ordinary bodhisattva versus Arya bodhisattva?
Yeah, you could say that also. Ordinary bodhisattva would be conventional bodhisattva, and Arya bodhisattva would be an ultimate bodhisattva. Okay. So non-dual awareness does not refer here to awareness of the absence of subject-object duality. You said in the commentary, it is explained in terms of the wisdom free of the two extremes, which can arise prior to being a bodhisattva. So there's no inconsistency here. Those who interpret this wisdom in terms of the ultimate awakening mind are entirely missing its proper context. So ultimate bodhicitta, ultimate awakening mind, is only achieved on the path of seeing. Here we're just talking about someone who's just entered the path of accumulation, the causes of that conventional bodhisattva. And I'll just, before I answer, let Sudha ask his question, I'll just finish this sentence. The non-dual awareness here in the salutation verse has to be a wisdom that is the cause of the bodhisattva who has entered the initial stage of the path. Okay, so Sudha, what do you think?
Venerable, is it then fair to say that the direct realization of emptiness can never be the cause of a bodhisattva. Because I feel like that's what it's implying in the footnote,
Right,
for
yeah,
example.
yeah.
That okay. So I just want to get that clear that you can never be you can't have a
Can't
direct
have a direct realization of emptiness before. Well, there's one exception. Who can think of the exception?
Well, in the case of Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, of course, you can have a direct realization of emptiness, and the same emptiness that's realized by the bodhisattva. But in the case of a bodhisattva, I think what we were saying earlier that you can't. I think it's obvious you can't be an Arya bodhisattva without a direct realization of emptiness, and hence. And hence you can have a conceptual understanding of emptiness up until the path of the last bit of the path of preparation before you
So what
enter the path of seeing.
What I'm thinking here is that some Shravaka Arhats, Pratyeka Buddha Arhats, well, they all have, if they're an Arhat, Shravaka Arhat, Pratyeka Buddha Arhats, they have realized emptiness directly.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. So they can remain in their nirvana after passing away. They can remain in their nirvana for eons, even until they're awakened, and then they are awakened by the Buddhas and extolled to, they're incited to practice the bodhisattva path, to develop bodhicitta, because they have no bodhicitta themselves. They have limitless compassion, but they don't have the great compassion of the Mahayana that the bodhisattvas have. So they have to cultivate that, and then so their direct realization, they already have direct realization of emptiness. So you could say in that case, that direct realization of emptiness can become the cause of them becoming an initial bodhisattva, because they are not yet a bodhisattva, right?
Yep.
They're not even on the Mahayana path of accumulation. They finished the Hinayana path of no more learning. They've achieved that. So maybe that would be an exception to that.
Yep. I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Okay. Paul, what do you think? Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. Nadine? Nadine, do you have any question?
Thank you so much for explaining, because without your explanations, I would not understand the book. And I'm a little bit lost today, but I will repeat it. Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, that's good. So I've already gone over as I've done before, sorry. So before we have dedication, does anyone have a question? They want an itching question? Don, were you about to raise your hand? No? Snehi got first before Violet. First, Snehi.
Oh, thank you, Venerable George. I was just thinking, our discussion today about the 3 causes for being a bodhisattva, and I was wondering why great compassion is listed as a separate cause, because it seems to be sort of subsumed in bodhicitta.
Right. So this is an interesting question. Why not great love? Even beyond your question, why great compassion? Why not great love? When we talk about the 7 causes and effect, we get up to affectionate love, which is not actual love, right? Affectionate love is not full-fledged definition of love. Love is the desire that sentient beings be enjoined with happiness. Compassion is the desire that sentient beings be free of suffering. So the next, after affectionate love, comes great compassion. When you have great compassion, you will necessarily also have great love. But generally, we don't talk about great love as being one of the causes. Why is that? Well, think about it. When we talk about the 4 noble truths, the first truth is the truth of suffering. right? It's not the truth of the lack of happiness. You know, knowing that sentient beings are suffering, that they have the causes of suffering, which are karma and klesha, that it motivates one to separate them from suffering. Why would one want to separate them from suffering first before giving them happiness? Well, like when we talk about Tonglen, you know the Tonglen meditation, right? See, in Tonglen, we say, begin by taking the suffering and then send out all your good qualities and so forth. And you take on the suffering, giving away your body, happiness, karma, and possessions and so forth, the merits of the 3 times. You always take on the suffering first, because if sentient beings are suffering, they can't experience happiness. If someone is on the street with a gaping wound from a car accident, and you say, "Oh, here, have this chocolate bar," it's not going to be something useful for them. If they're burning in the fire, you want to get them out of the fire first. So great compassion, comes before bodhicitta, because on the basis of great compassion, one, which from the Mahayana point of view has the intention to separate sentient beings from suffering. It has that intention. On the basis of that, if you realize your current situation, can I alleviate the suffering of sentient beings? You realize that I might be able to help some sentient beings, certainly in a worldly sense, medical care, advice, money, food, and so forth. But to lead them on the path, even I know a little bit about the path, I just be guessing sometimes. I don't know their minds. I don't have clairvoyance. Even if I had clairvoyance on the basis of single pointed concentration, I wouldn't know all the methods. I know their problem, but I wouldn't know the correct methods to lead them. So in order to do that, I must become a Buddha. So from great compassion, you develop the exceptional resolve that I will do this myself. And on the basis of that, you recognize you don't have the tools to do that yourself. So then you generate bodhicitta. So great compassion is separated a little bit from bodhicitta. You still have to develop the exceptional resolve to do it yourself, and then to analyze whether you can do it, and then develop the thought, I must achieve enlightenment. Does that help a little, Sneh?
Yes, that makes it really clear. But you mentioned something which made me realize I don't understand this point. You said affectionate love is not the same as love.
It's not, yeah, it's called.
And, yeah, I don't know the difference.
Iyongwe Jampa. So Jampa generally means Maitri, means love. Love is the thought, may sentient beings be endowed with happiness and the causes of happiness, right? Compassion is the thought, may sentient beings be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. So the cause of great compassion, as we will talk about in the subsequent classes, you have to have, let's say, if you see other sentient beings suffering, that's not enough for you to develop compassion for them. If you see your enemy suffering, you might even think, good, they deserve that, Republicans or Democrats or whatever, when you hear the story, some scandal has come out the other side, you go, oh yeah, got him. So to generate compassion on observing suffering, you have to have an affection for that person, some sort of warmth in your mind, like, like seeing your family or a little cuddly dog or a dolphin, what is it, famous things, these animals with the huge eyes, your heart, the on TV when they had the commercials for the anti-cruelty to animals, they showed these, oh, so cute little animals that are scroungy, but they look so cute, you develop some affection for them. So without affectionate love, without affection for sentient beings, even you notice their suffering, you won't develop compassion or great compassion. So that's a precursor that what in Tibetan is called Yongwe Jamba. I don't know the Sanskrit of that. Yongwa means coming to the mind. It's literally, Yi means mind, Ongwa means having come, arising in the mind. So what it means is when you see them, the warmth comes into your mind. So we can call it heartwarming love or affectionate love. There are other ways that might be translated, but that will come in our subsequent class when Lama Khapa is explaining the need. Is just observing the suffering of sentient beings enough? No, you need to have some affection for them. So that's the cause of that's one of the causes of great compassion when we talk about the 7 elements of cause and effect. Okay. Doris, you've been patiently holding your hand up high there. Your arm must be tired.
My question, thank you, Venerable. My question is, in the definition of bodhicitta, sometimes I see the words by myself alone, and sometimes I don't. And I'm thinking the by myself alone is more associated with the great compassion, and maybe that's why it's not in there. And maybe that kind of marries up with the previous question, because I kind of picked up on you saying myself alone in relation to great compassion. So does it belong in the definition or not?
So the two different, there's debate about whether by myself alone, where that goes, if it's a great compassion, I mentioned this earlier, or if it's in the Laksam, in the Adishaya, this, like we said, where we had this quotation from the invoking the altruistic resolve, and in Tibetan we say Laksam, that's the next cause after great compassion. Those who say great compassion, it has the intention to do it by oneself, and there are other scholars that say it's not until Laksam that you have the thought, I will do it myself. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, I think, often has put it like that it's the Laksam, the 6th cause, the one just before bodhicitta that thinks I will do it by myself. So when you have bodhicitta, I don't know if you have to say by myself. You generally, the definitions say, like we say, semke pani shendon chir yangak sope changchudu, desiring for complete enlightenment for the welfare of others, shendon. So generally, when we say dun, shendon or rangdun means one's own aim or one's own benefit, and shendon means the welfare of others. So bodhicitta has both aims. You aim for full enlightenment, which is for your own benefit. When we talk about the two aims, that one's own aim is to achieve enlightenment where you're free of all suffering, you have happiness, bliss, even eating garbage, whatever situation, you have no delusions, no problems. That's the ultimate aim of oneself, the benefit of oneself. Shendon is to be able to benefit other sentient beings, and that is accomplished by emanating the Nirmanakaya and the Sambhogakaya to lead sentient beings. The Dharmakaya, the aim is for one's own benefit. And so at that point, when you talk about actual bodhicitta, you're not thinking so much by myself alone. That is something that impels the thought. If I've got to do it by myself, I have to become enlightened. Does that make sense, Doris?
Yes, so I'm thinking that the by myself alone thing isn't needed in that. I mean, it doesn't even translate from, there's nothing about by myself alone in the Tibetan. So
For
I'm
bodhicitta,
inclined to
right.
leave it out.
Come again?
I'm inclined to leave it out, the by myself alone.
You can leave it there if you want. Yeah, you can leave it there.
I'm inclined to leave it out.
But it's already implied either in the great compassion or the exceptional resolve, laksam. When you think I've got to do this by myself, if I can't rely on other sentient beings, in other Buddhas, I've got to do it myself. I've got to become a Buddha. I can't just, get to a high level of bodhisattva or where I am now and pray to the Buddhas that others will, that the Buddhas will help them out. I've got to do it myself. Then you realize that if you've got to do it yourself, you've got to become a Buddha. So I think that's one reason you don't have to put by myself alone. It almost sounds like some lyric of a song or something, by myself alone. You don't have to put it in the definition of bodhicitta, I think.
It's implied.
So
Sean,
yeah, thank you. Sean, quick question.
So as far as with the Nirmanakaya and Sambhogakaya, in an ordinary person, is that a Nirmanakaya emanation, or are those things only coming from someone that's like an advanced bodhisattva or whatever that's able to produce these things?
So Nirmanakaya is one of the 3 or 4 bodies of a Buddha, right? It's not something, you can have a nirmana, an emanation. You can create emanations if you develop single-pointed concentration as an ordinary person, but those are not called Nirmanakaya. Nirmanakaya is the emanation of a fully enlightened Buddha, which is, its speech is the actual Sambhogakaya, its mind is the Dharmakaya, and it is something that is able to be perceived by ordinary beings of pure karma. Not all beings can see a Nirmanakaya of the Buddha. They might see, like there were some beings in the disciples of the Buddha, I think his cook, who didn't see the actual Nirmanakaya. He didn't have pure karma. He saw someone there, some guy that everyone else was revering, but he didn't see the aura around him. He only saw faults and so forth. So he didn't actually see the Nirmanakaya. The Nirmanakaya is only perceivable by individuals of pure karma. Okay, does that help a little bit?
Yeah, I guess I'm still trying to figure out though, because ultimately we have Buddha nature. So what is our current form?
Okay, so we have Buddha nature, but we are not yet Buddha. We have the potential to be, Buddha nature means the potential to become a Buddha. But that doesn't mean that we are Buddha now. Like some Kargyu, some other traditions, they say you are already Buddha, but you haven't realized it. That's not the meaning. From Lama Tsongkhapa's tradition, many of the Tibetan traditions, that's not the meaning of Buddha potential or Buddha nature, that we are already Buddha. Like in the Uttara Tantra, there's analogies that, like having in oneself or finding a Buddha statue, golden Buddha statue encrusted in mud, and not realizing it and sort of chipping away the mud and realizing you had the Buddha statue there all along. That's just an analogy to the process. If you realize that you have the Buddha potential, you can become Buddha. It doesn't mean that you are already Buddha. Okay, more about that later. So last question to Violet.
Hi, Venerable, thank you. I'd like to know is basically is that Shabaka and Pratipaka, when they reach the Nirvana, where are they that need Buddha to waken them up when their karma reach?
Right. What did you say? Where are they?
Yeah, when they reach Nirvana. So where are they?
Okay.
Are they in the formless realm?
Oh, I see. So I'm not sure. I haven't heard that they're in the formless realm. Certainly, they may be associated with their former body until that disintegrates. That is not, when I say associated with, it doesn't mean that within that body. When they have died, that mind, their mind leaves that body and remains. I haven't heard it mentioned as the formless realm, but they remain in meditative equipoise. I don't know if you could state a particular location. When you become enlightened, your mind, like all minds, have a mounted wind, have a wind which acts as their mount, right? Which causes the mind to move. When you become enlightened, that wind pervades all existence. And so in one sense, that's why the Buddhas are said to be omnipresent. They're present everywhere. They're present in the form realm, the formless realm, the desire realm, everywhere at the same time. It's not like they have to go someplace to get there. When you invoke the Buddhas here to receive your offerings, please come here and take this, eat this torma or something. It's not like they have to come from somewhere else because they're omnipresent. They're already here. For a hearer or solitary realizer arhat, they are not necessarily omnipresent. Because that omnipresence, that the fact that the mounted wind has expanded to all is is the result of having cultivated bodhicitta and working for the welfare of all sentient beings. So that right now our winds are very much associated with our own body. Maybe they might extend a little bit, but by cultivating bodhicitta, that's one of the causes of achieving omniscience, through accumulating merit and wisdom and so forth, but on the basis of bodhicitta, whereas the hearers and solitary realizers don't have that same kind of omnipresence. So where they are, I don't know. I'll do a little research. I'll ask some of my Dharma friends if anyone figures out some solution to that, let me know. So thank you very much. I've gone over quite a bit, but maybe worthwhile. Would the person in charge put up our dedication prayer? Can't remember who it was. Thank you. So remember, dedication means what it means. Generally, we say there are three important times: the beginning, the middle, and the end. Beginning, it's important to have a motivation, a special motivation to achieve enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings and so forth, bodhicitta motivation. In the middle, it's important to do whatever you're doing with concentration and so forth, like listening to the teachings and contemplating. And in the end, it's important to dedicate the virtuous karma that we've created, the gewa, like in the first words of the dedication prayer, gewa di, due to these virtues, to dedicate these virtues. It's a wish, a desire that will cause them to ripen in a particular way in the future, in the same way that taking the reins of a horse, rather than letting go of the reins of the horse will just take you wherever it wants to go. It'll go down to the stream or to the clover field, or if you want to get over to your mother's house or your, someplace in town, you have to use the reins to cause the horse to go where you want. So the virtues left to themselves will maybe ripen in ways that won't be necessarily beneficial for us in the future. They'll be beneficial in the sense that virtues only give rise to happiness, but they won't necessarily enhance our spiritual practice. They might cause us to be very handsome or beautiful, in which case pride could rise, or they could, if they're not dedicated, we could become very wealthy as a result of generosity this life that was not dedicated. Like many people today, they engage in generosity for fame or in notoriety or something. As a result of that, they may be very wealthy in the future, but as a result of that, they can become avaricious, miserly, and so forth, and proud and so forth. So dedication is very important. Due to the merits of these virtues, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all migrators without exception into that enlightened state. And it's like baseline dedication, thinking, may these merits bring about my achievement of enlightenment, become a Guru Buddha, and as a result of that, having become a Buddha, I will be able to lead sentient beings into that very same state. May the supreme precious bodhicitta, which has not arisen, rise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. So whatever bodhicitta, understanding of bodhicitta that we have now, may it increase and so forth. So there's still a long life prayer. There we go. So for Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you who uphold the Muni's moral code, the morality of the Pratimoksha of Shakyamuni Buddha, who serves as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine. So meaning that Lama Zopa also helps to spread Lama Tsongkhapa's doctrine, who's recognized as an emanation of Manjushri, masterfully accomplishing magnificent prayers, honoring the three jewels. You are the savior of myself and others, your disciples. Please live long. And for all our gurus, you are eyes viewing all the infinite scriptures. Through you are like eyes for my viewing all the infinite scriptures, because you explain them. Supreme gateway for the fortunate ones traveling to liberation. Enjoying with skillful means, engaging with skillful means, moved by love, by compassion. Sewa means compassion also. All illuminating spiritual friends, please live a long and stable life. So thank you. Thanks for your patience. Take a look at the Facebook group page if you haven't already done so. I know for some of you, Facebook looks like a hot, steaming mess. You don't want to get near it at all, but you can turn off all sorts of things in it if you read. Take a look. There's some communication there. Look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you, Venerable George.
Thank you, Venerable
As
George.
before, read ahead several pages, review what we've done before. And if you have questions, either leave them on the page or you can send them to some of the other members, to Shanka or others who will forward them to me if you don't have an email address.